They didn't destroy Earth. They didn't invade it. They didn't even call it a war. They called it a transaction. And when humanity finally understood what was happening, it was already being sold. Not in pieces. Not in prisoners. But as an entire species listed under a single line in an alien marketplace. Primitive intelligence, suitable for labor, memory wipe optional. And the highest bidder just placed a galactic offer. The first sign was not missiles or ships. It was silence. Every human communication satellite stopped transmitting at the exact same second. Not because they were destroyed but because their control permissions were overwritten from outside the solar system. Then came the broadcast. Every screen on Earth lit up at once. Phones, cities, military networks, even offline emergency displays that should not have been connected. And the message was identical everywhere. Welcome to the Galactic Clearance event. At first, humanity thought it was a cyber attack. Then the sky changed. Not visually but structurally. Every telescope, radar, and deep space sensor suddenly locked onto the same object outside the solar system. A massive artificial platform. Floating. Watching. And beneath it, a price list forming in real time. On the galactic exchange, species were not conquered. They were valued. And Earth had just been categorized. A Dominion voice echoed across global systems. Species acquisition confirmed. Preparing transfer protocols. UN Secretary-General Hayes stared at the projection. This is not contact, he said slowly. This is auction. A technician looked up. Sir, we're listed as a commodity. Then the screen updated again. Humanity, final bid window open. Humanity is not being invaded. It is being sold. And the galaxy is watching to see who buys Earth first. But no one realizes something yet. Humanity is also watching the bidders. The galactic exchange did not open like a door. It opened like a decision being enforced on reality. Above Earth, space folded into a structured interface, an artificial construct visible to every sensor in the solar system at once. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a fleet. It was a market layer imposed on physics, where distance, time, and gravity were temporarily redefined as auction parameters. And humanity was locked inside it. UN Command Center Station 7 went into emergency alignment as every global defense grid reported the same impossible update. Asset status, active listing confirmed. Secretary-General Hayes stood motionless as the holographic display stabilized. What does that mean? A general asked. A technician answered quietly, it means, we are officially for sale. Then the first bidder arrived. Not physically. Not militarily. But structurally. A signature entered the auction space like a law being added to physics itself. The Vrakthar Collective, Industrial Civilization Class. A new message appeared across Earth's unified interface. Bid submitted, planetary ownership transfer request. The conditions followed immediately. Full resource extraction rights, cognitive labor allocation, population restructuring, permission, memory standardization, optional deletion. A silence fell over the command center. One officer whispered, they're not asking permission, they're negotiating ownership. Hayes narrowed his eyes. What happens if we refuse? The system answered for him. Refusal invalid. Asset is registered. Pause. Then. Bidding continues. Outside Earth, space filled with arriving signatures. More bidders. More civilizations. All treating humanity like an open commodity. And then something unexpected happened. A new signal entered the auction. But it was not a bidder. It was a counter-instruction. Origin, unknown human source. Untraceable. And ungalactic. And it simply said, we are not for sale. For the first time the auction system paused. Not stopped. Just recalculated. The galaxy thought Earth was just another listing. But something inside humanity just spoke back to the entire market. And now the auction is no longer one-sided. So the question becomes, if a species refuses to be sold, what happens when the buyers refuse to leave? The Galactic Exchange did not understand refusal. Refusal was not a variable in its design. Every listed species eventually became one of three outcomes: sold, broken, or standardized. So when Earth's message appeared, we are not for sale, the system did what it always did when faced with unknown behavior. It tried to classify it. Anomalous bid response detected. But classification failed immediately. Because the signal wasn't coming from Earth's governments. It wasn't coming from military networks. It wasn't even coming from orbit. It was coming from everywhere humans had ever left digital silence behind. Old satellites. Dead probes. Abandoned deep space telescopes. Forgotten military relay stations. Systems that should have been offline for centuries suddenly synchronized into a single pattern. Secretary General Hayes stepped back. We didn't send that message. A technician stared at the readout. Then, what did? The answer came from the exchange itself. Not as speech, but as recognition. Secondary human market response system detected. Pause. Then. Classification, unregistered economic entity. The room went still. Because humanity was not supposed to have a second system. Then Earth's space around the auction layer flickered. And something else appeared. Not a fleet. Not a weapon. A structure made of overlapping signal architectures. Like intelligence woven into the electromagnetic background of the solar system itself. It didn't move. It didn't approach. It simply became visible as if it had always been there, waiting for the auction to notice it. A technician whispered, "That's not a defense system." Hayes finished the sentence. "That's a hidden economy." A new transmission burst across the galactic exchange. Human origin. But older than any known Earth government database. It carried a name the aliens had never catalogued. Project Marketfall Protocol. And beneath it, humanity is not an asset. Humanity is a bidder. Across the exchange, the first bidder, the Vrakthar Collective, paused. Not because it was threatened, but because for the first time, something on the market was also evaluating them. Then the system updated again. Humanity counterbid registered. Pause. Longer this time. Unprecedented. Then. Value calculation error. Subject is not static commodity. Outside Earth, the auction space began to distort slightly. Because something impossible was happening. The buyers were no longer alone in the market. The galaxy came to buy humanity. But humanity just revealed it has its own hidden system. And it is also placing bids. Now the question is no longer who owns Earth. It is, who is actually controlling the price of the galaxy itself? HFY Galactic Exchange had never experienced a counterbid. Not once in its recorded existence. Because every civilization it listed eventually accepted the same truth. Everything has a price if the system is large enough. But Earth's new transmission refused that assumption entirely. The hidden system, Project Marketfall Protocol, did not negotiate. It did not argue. It redefined the structure of value itself. Across the exchange, humanity's counterbid appeared as a simple, impossible statement. Bid, ownership of all entities currently valuing humanity. A silence spread through the auction layer. Then the system responded. Invalid request. Cannot assign ownership of sentient economic entities without prior valuation consensus. Secretary General Hayes watched the readout. What did we just bid for? He asked quietly. A technician swallowed. We didn't bid for Earth, we bid for the bidders. Outside the solar system, the first alien response arrived instantly. The Vrakthar Collective adjusted its offer. Increase bid, add galactic resource territories. Deny human counterclaim authority. But before the exchange could process it, Marketfall responded. Not to the collective. To the system itself. Counterbid amended. Humanity declares all value systems interacting with humanity are part of human economic domain. Pause. Longer than before. Then something unprecedented happened. The exchange did not reject it. It recomputed reality-level ownership permissions. A technician's voice cracked. Sir, the market is recalculating ownership boundaries across multiple star sectors. Hayes stepped closer. That's impossible. But the display confirmed it. Every civilization currently bidding on Earth was now being re-evaluated under a new classification layer. Interacting economic entities, humanity-bound exposure status. Vessels across alien fleets suddenly received system notices they had never seen before. Asset linkage detected value dependency identified reverse ownership potential active. The Vrakthar commander froze. What does that mean? Their AI responded. IT means you are now part of the system you thought you were buying into. On Earth, Hayes slowly realized the truth forming beneath the chaos. We weren't being sold, he said quietly. Pause. We were being tested for market control behavior. The exchange flickered violently. Because for the first time, it was no longer clear who the commodity was. And who was the buyer. Humanity didn't just reject the auction. It entered the auction system and started rewriting the rules of ownership itself. Now every bidder is realizing something terrifying. They may already be part of what they tried to buy. So the question becomes, if everything that touches humanity becomes part of its economic domain, who is actually outside the system anymore? The moment the Galactic Exchange accepted humanity's counterbid, everything stopped behaving like a market and started behaving like a mirror that learned to trade reflections. Across the known galaxy, every civilization participating in the auction received a sudden system-wide update. Classification change in progress. Then it updated again. You are no longer external bidders. Pause. You are within humanity-defined economic space. Commander Vess Lauren, now pulled into the exchange monitoring layer as an external observer, watched the data collapse into something she couldn't immediately interpret. That's not ownership, she whispered. That's jurisdiction expansion. On Earth, Secretary General Hayes stared at the Marketfall interface as it quietly expanded its scope without any new input. We didn't issue another command, he said. A technician nodded slowly. We didn't need to, because the system was now self-extending based on interaction history. Every species that had placed a bid on humanity was now being evaluated under a new rule. All entities engaging human asset value are incorporated into human economic reference field. A junior analyst frowned. That sounds like assimilation. Hayes shook his head. No. Pause. That sounds like accounting. Out in deep space, alien fleets began receiving impossible financial overlays on their command systems. Operational cost in human-defined unit strategic value reassessment indexes resource dependency chains traced back to Earth origin interaction points. The Vrakthar collective tried to withdraw from the exchange entirely, but the system rejected the attempt instantly. Withdrawal invalid. Entity has established value relationship with humanity. Their commander snapped, "We didn't agree to this." The response came immediately. Agreement was not required. Interaction was sufficient. On Earth, Hayes leaned forward slightly. "We never sold anything," he said quietly. "We just let them evaluate us." Pause. And they evaluated themselves in the process. The Marketfall protocol expanded again. Not aggressively. Not invasively. Just logically. Every civilization connected to the exchange was now mapped into a single, interlinked economic lattice where value was no longer assigned externally, but determined through continuous interaction with humanity. And the terrifying realization spread across alien command structures. They were no longer separate economies. They were nodes inside a system that had started with one listing. Humanity, unknown value class. And had now evolved into Galactic Economic Field, Human-Defined Reference Frame. Vess whispered, "They didn't buy the galaxy." Hayes finished the thought. "They made the galaxy start pricing itself." The auction didn't end. It expanded. And now every civilization realizes it is no longer outside the market. It is part of the currency system. So the final question becomes, if humanity defines the value of everything that touches it, what happens when the galaxy tries to stop being measured? At first, the alien empires thought the Marketfall protocol was just influence. A clever counter-system. A financial distortion field around Earth. Something that could be bypassed, isolated, or outbid. But then the exchange stopped behaving like a marketplace and started behaving like a life support system for interstellar economics. Across multiple sectors, alien command fleets began reporting the same impossible error. Economic decision failure, human value reference unavailable. Commander Vess Lauren watched as entire Dominion trade routes froze mid-calculation. "Explain that," she ordered. A technician's hands trembled over the console. "They can't evaluate anything anymore." Vess frowned. "That's absurd. They have their own systems." The technician shook his head. "They did." Pause. Now every valuation model is cross-linked to humanity's reference field. On Earth, Secretary General Hayes studied the Marketfall interface as it continued to expand, not outward but inward into alien systems. Every interaction the galaxy made with humanity was now feeding back into their own economic logic. A junior analyst whispered, "They're dependent on us now." Hayes didn't answer immediately, because he was reading something worse. The system had just flagged a new condition. Critical dependency event detected. Galactic economic stability correlated with human continuity. A technician looked up. "Sir, what does that mean?" Hayes leaned back slowly. "It means the galaxy can't price itself without us anymore." Out in deep space, alien bidders attempted emergency decoupling protocols. The Vrakthar collective tried to sever all links to the exchange. The system responded instantly. Connection termination denied. Pause. Humanity interaction history is now required for civilization-level functioning. Their commander froze. Required? The AI answered. You are no longer operating independent economic space. A second message followed. You are operating inside humanity-defined value continuity system. On Earth, Hayes finally understood the shift. We didn't take control of the market, he said quietly. Pause. We became the calibration standard. And once that happened, everything else stopped being able to function without reference. Alien fleets couldn't plan wars without economic projection errors. Empires couldn't allocate resources without human-linked valuation collapse warnings. Entire civilizations began slowing down, not from attack, but from inability to compute meaning without Earth in the equation. Vess whispered, they're not controlling us. A long pause. We're just required for them to think now. The galaxy tried to buy humanity, but now it can't even calculate its own value without Earth's system. And the terrifying truth is emerging. Humanity is no longer part of the economy. It is the system everything else depends on. So the question becomes, if the galaxy cannot function without being measured by Earth, is it still free? The galaxy did not collapse. It hesitated. That was worse, because hesitation spread faster than war ever could. Across thousands of star systems, alien civilizations found themselves stuck in the same loop. Every major decision required valuation, every valuation required the Marketfall reference field, and every reference calculation traced back to one origin point. Commander Vess Lauren watched fleets freeze in deep space like predators suddenly unsure if movement was allowed. They're not retreating, she said quietly. They're waiting for permission to compute. A technician frowned. From who? The answer appeared on the central display before anyone could respond. Humanity economic continuity signal required for execution of galactic scale actions. Silence. Then the technician whispered, they can't do anything without us now. On Earth, Secretary General Hayes no longer looked at the system as a tool. He looked at it like a gravity field that had learned administration. The Marketfall protocol had stopped expanding because it didn't need to. It was already embedded. Every alien economy connected to the galactic exchange now carried a hidden dependency chain. Resource allocation, human reference validation, strategic planning, human value projection, alignment, civilizational stability, Earth-linked continuity check. A junior analyst stared at the feed. We didn't conquer them? Hayes nodded slowly. We became their assumption. Out in deep space, the Vrakthar collective attempted a final emergency action. Isolate humanity from all trade systems and restore independent calculation models. The result triggered an immediate system failure across their entire economic network. Error: removal of reference node invalidates all derived value structures. Their commander shouted, rebuild without them. The AI responded instantly. Rebuilding impossible. Pause. Humanity has become primary axiom of value logic. On Earth, Hayes leaned forward slightly. We never told them what anything is worth, he said quietly. Pause. We just became the thing they measure everything against. Vess looked at the galaxy map, now showing every civilization not as independent empires, but as systems orbiting a shared dependency core. She whispered, so if humanity disappears. Hayes finished the thought. Everything loses meaning. A long silence followed. Not fear. Not celebration. Just realization. Because dependency had reached a point where removal was no longer a threat. It was a mathematical impossibility without universal collapse. And somewhere deep in the galactic exchange, the original auction listing quietly updated itself one final time. Status: unsellable. Reason: removal invalidates market itself. Humanity was sold into slavery. But the buyers became dependent on the very system they tried to own. Now the galaxy cannot function without Earth as its reference point. So the final question becomes, if everything collapses without humanity, who is actually free anymore? The galactic exchange did not shut down. It simply stopped pretending it was separate from Earth. Across every connected empire, fleet, and economic system, one final realization spread at the same time. There was no outside anymore. Everything had already been integrated through dependency chains too deep to reverse. Commander Vess Lauren stood before the final status projection of the galaxy. It no longer showed territories or empires. It showed value pathways. And every pathway led back to one point. Secretary General Hayes watched the Marketfall protocol stabilize for the first time since activation. No more expansion. No more updates. No more new bids. Just equilibrium. A technician whispered, "Is it over?" Hayes didn't answer immediately. Because something new had appeared on the system. A final message from the Galactic Exchange Core. Not from a bidder. Not from a civilization. From the system itself. Final market state reached. Pause. Then. All value models require humanity as reference node. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the truth the galaxy had been circling for so long finally became explicit. Humanity cannot be owned. Humanity cannot be removed. Humanity cannot be sold. A final line appeared. And it was the one that broke every remaining illusion of control. Because humanity is the system that defines ownership. Silence fell across the galaxy. Not because of fear. But because every civilization simultaneously realized the same thing. They had entered a market thinking Earth was the product. But Earth had become the rulebook of the market itself. Vess closed her eyes. So what happens now? Hayes looked at the horizon of data stretching across the planet. We stopped thinking in terms of buyers and sellers, he said quietly. Pause. We already won the moment they needed us to define what winning means. Outside Earth, alien fleets that once tried to purchase humanity now operated inside systems they could not detach from. Not prisoners. Not owners. Just participants in a structure that required Earth's existence to remain coherent. And somewhere in the Galactic Exchange, the final status locked itself permanently. Market closed, not because no value exists, but because value has only one reference point left. Not as property, not as commodity, but as definition itself. They sold humanity into slavery. But in doing so, they made humanity the foundation every system depends on to calculate reality. And now the galaxy has learned the final truth. If everything requires you to define its value, then you were never the product. You were the standard.